Welcome. Tiny Hands, Big Dreams. Here are the homestead in southern Ecuador. We're seeing a ton of destruction from weather right now. Fire, floods, storms, craziness, both the US and Ecuador. Before I get to the video, I just want to throw this little pre-note in. We made this video a few days ago. It takes time to edit things. We had stuff going on. We didn't realize the unprecedented destruction, the nature of this storm. What was it, like a 1,000-year event plus? Oh my gosh, this whole town's gone. People still stranded. It is catastrophic. Might have influenced how we talked about it. Please keep that in mind. At this point, the only thing that I could say as advice of, if we were there, we would have loaded up the car with supplies and tools and asked, who can we help? Yep. And that was that community, and that was part of why we loved that part of the country. There is still strong sense of community, and gosh, my heart goes out to you. Yeah. All right, and now the video. We're seeing a ton of destruction from weather right now. Fire, floods, storms, craziness, both the US and Ecuador. There's a bunch on this subject. This is a Chew the Cud, as we have so named some of our discussional conversations. We hope you can take part with us.
This is a little bit more, I guess, current events newsy than we usually do, just because it is literally happening, and it is strangely in two places that we know rather well.
It is. The first thing is our thoughts go to, there's so many homesteaders and people in general, but homesteaders that we watch, so we know about them rather than just people we don't know. In the wake of Helene, that have just had...
Yeah,
You lost a bar fight with Mother Nature. Holy cow, you didn't see that one coming.
In a bar that wasn't like... You doesn't usually see fights. I was trying with that metaphor. Yeah.
So I watched 8 different storm predictions, and it all tracked the storm within a pretty narrow range, and then it went, and all of them missed.
No, it went,
Well, I'm flipping it.
Oh, you're flipping it. See, I hate when
I'm trying to be like
you're
TV
good at
smart.
that, and then I'm not.
So it shifted.
Went further to the east.
It went more east than all of the predictions. Yeah. All of them missed it.
Now we are somewhat nerdy in our, I mean, mostly me, but both of us in our weather tracking. I like it. I like to know what's going on. Most of it isn't a big deal here, but because I have my mom who lives in Tennessee, I pay attention to the weather there. When I saw that there was the hurricane, I'm like, well, the reason I picked that spot in Tennessee and she followed us was because usually there are no hurricanes or other weather calamities.
And in general, there's sort of a bubble that everything sort of comes from this side and goes away.
Funny enough, there's still that bubble. And my mom's fine.
Fine.
But I was watching it specifically because of that, where it was headed. And I saw its general trajectory and went, she'll get some rain. And went to bed and thought nothing of it. And woke up the next morning and asked her how was the weather. And she's like, oh, it's relatively bad. I'm like, okay. And then I looked online and started like really looking into what people were saying, like, as the days have gone by.
A lot of it did not come out initially because nobody had any sort of connectivity of any sort or power. And the news people drive up to the edge of where the road is blocked and they're like, oh yeah, it's bad over there. Let me go stand in ankle deep water and report on it. I used to be in journalism. Like, it's what they do.
And because it wasn't a typical place for a hurricane, just like any time, however many years ago it was that Texas got like the crazy cold weather event that is unusual for them, they have a harder time managing it than somewhere that North Dakota or something, where like, you got snow and ice and whatever.
Totally normal day.
When it is unusual, they are less set up with infrastructure or just in literally how a city is set up.
You prepare for what happens. Not for what doesn't.
Very much of that area is in the floodplains, because that's just
so humanity comes in. Beautiful river valley, lovely river. Water is life. You must have water.
Fertile soil.
Before the time when pumps and things and electricity was a thing, everyone settles near the river because you have to like bucket it.
Yep.
All the flat land is easy to farm, to build a house on. There's a hill over there. Like Why would we want to go and spend so much effort to try to live on a hill? Ugh. Live by the water, die by the water.
Yeah.
This is a great moment. There's a great video that we did. I'm going to pull our own chain. Ding, ding. Called Pick Your Poison. I'll put the link below. We talk about where you live. Everywhere has its goods and its bads. Pick your poison. There's, oh my gosh, there's a huge range of things of from crime to weather, from this, from that. So you try to pick what you like best and what has the least amount of negatives. And people differ on what's negative.
What negative you are willing to potentially have to face.
Some people are like, oh, floods and hurricanes things. Other people are like, it's earthquakes, it's whatever.
Or
people
it's
like,
a tornado, or
yeah, the neighborhood's full of crackheads, but property's cheap, and I get a good job.
Everybody has their own opinion.
Sure.
And you should look at all of the information and choose wisely. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the people who decided to settle in that general area, we're talking, I guess, North Carolina. I know Asheville was hit really hard, and then the very northeast of Tennessee. So, like very, very northeast. Those are areas we would have said are good places to homestead. We would have recommended them.
I have said that.
So I can't really fault anyone for choosing those places. I can't be like, well, you didn't choose a good place.
It was a very unusual storm. But
very.
That being said, the unusual weather, as the world goes through its cycles, weirder, unusual, unstable weather is going to start to be the norm. Everything is changing. You're on a timeline where in your lifetime, if you're not too old, you will see a major catastrophe upon the earth. This is but the opening act, and it's going to get worse. So the only thing you can do is prepare for more extremes in every respect. Expect the unexpected, because in 5 years that will be the expected.
Yeah. So that's happening, or has happened, is still happening in many ways in the U.S. Which I guess, yes, this happens in Florida. Yes, this happens in Texas. Name other states. It happens. It is not typical for that area, which is why it should be making the news more, in my opinion.
Yeah, storms. If you watch the storm tracks, over 50 years, and you see all the tracks, like there's the traditional, but then the jet stream has changed. Everything's changed.
Anomalies happen. At the same time, we, being in Ecuador, while we have people there and we care, and obviously, just as people we care, we look at the things going on in the country we're currently in. I at least had no idea what was going on in Ecuador as far as the weather, because we're a little isolated in our lovely off-grid bubble here in the rainforest.
We can tell you with certainty every minute of the day what things are like in our valley, as far as the eye can see, in every direction. It's raining, it's sunny, there's a little bit of wind, it's a thing, oh, we got some smoke from a different country, we can tell you that. And then sometimes we get surprised.
So I was looking at the one of the Facebook groups for Ecuador that I'm part of, and someone had posted a link to Ecuador Emergency or Emergency Ecuador or something like that, a group. I'm like, well, I don't know, I should be part of that. I should, just in case there's things I want to know about. Turns out pretty much the whole country's on fire.
Yeah, the droughts have turned into fires.
They've turned into widespread power outages, because this is a country run on hydro, and when there is no water, there is no power.
Yeah, so
then there's all the ramifications of having no power for 4, 8, 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah, the local towns, and there's a couple of times I've gone to town, I'm like, oh yeah, I needed to hit up the ATM to get some money for some simple supplies. I need $20 or $30. Nope. ATM runs on power. Infrastructure runs on power. Requires internet. Now, most of the town doesn't care.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. So in California, where I grew up, when the power was out, like, you couldn't do much of anything. You go to the grocery store and they're like, we have to shut down. I don't know. We don't know how to do anything. It's all broken. And they would just sort of panic and lock the doors. That was the end of that, because everything had to be run by the computer. Sorry. And their inventory system and the thing and the alarm, and we can't provide safety and whatever. Here, there's literally no difference. You walk up, the things, the stores, the lights aren't on, but people are there. You're just paying cash. It's a cash-based society. The less technologically advanced society is more robust in the instance of
loss of infrastructure.
Yeah. Now, I ended up scrounging every bit of change I could to buy like the supplies that I needed, mostly bag of rice, a little bit of corn.
Yeah, non-ideal.
Non-ideal.
Yeah. So that's an interesting. And as far as the U.S., like we saw one video from a news anchor, and I didn't perhaps realize the extent at this point in seeing the things on the internet. She's talking about having to put the poles back up, and I went, "Oh, this is not just like there's always power outages and there's severe weather. No, literally, the power poles are."
I mean, there's usually a couple that a tree takes down. They got to come out. All of them. There's a picture of a highway, and there's just nothingness in this valley. Well, they said it was a highway, like it's just mud flat with trees everywhere. And then they showed the previous picture, and there's utility poles running down the road. There's buildings, there's things, there's a highway that... Nope, it's all gone.
Boy. So this is not minor infrastructure disruptment. Like, I mean, I've experienced that plenty in the U.S. This is...
The water, the flooding is bad, the damage is bad, the loss of structures is catastrophic for some people. The infrastructure, roads have washed out, water lines have washed out, the power, massive sections have been... This storm is going to pull crews from the entire United States, probably Canada, coming in on emergency contracts to try to rebuild. They're going to run out of poles, wiring, going to run out of transformers. There's going to be back orders, months and months and months. This is going to take time.
And then there's all the water. I don't even know what damage is done to all of those systems. That's crazy. And most people are reliant on that infrastructure.
So, let's talk about off-grid preparedness. We are off-grid. It was extra work. It was extra money.
It was extra upfront work.
It was extra upfront money.
Yes.
All the things up front. You had to put in the time. Now, there was a famous quote by a large YouTuber talking about their homestead thing.
I like how we made it a famous quote when it's not.
It's famous to us. We say it every so often and laugh about it. Hopefully, we've heard it from other people as well. They're like, oh, well, I'll go off grid when I need to. They just lost. Like,
now you need to. What are you going to do?
No.
Oh,
you can't.
Snap.
You can't. I'm sorry. You couldn't even order the stuff now. Nobody can get to you. The inventories are going to be socked out. Like, emergency supplies are gone. Generators are going to be snapped up.
And even on the smaller scale of here in Ecuador, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, so that off-grid power. I'm like, so you needed to figure that out before you didn't have power.
In the last 2 weeks, I have again had a flurry of people because they know that we're off-grid now. So they're like, oh, you have solar power. Yeah. Oh, well, I want to get it.
We had somebody show up at our driveway to look at
he wants to see the solar system. And I'm like, okay. And then they're like, oh, that's like a big thing, and there's structure, and there's all these panels and wiring and things and apparatus. And I'm like,
I feel the close stuff.
Oh yeah. So he comes out and he's like, yeah, there's a huge rack of panels. There's the steel structure. There's all the stuff, the batteries. And he's like, I'm like, He's like, yeah, the power's out in town. They're out of power 10 hours a day. He's got a little farm up in the hills. And everyone tells me they want the same system. I want to run like 4 light bulbs, charge my cell phone, and a fridge, maybe a blender. Everybody keeps asking me for the exact same system.
Like the Ecuadorian power standard. Which, when you think about it, that's kind of...
I used to design and install solar power systems. I may actually start to put together a kit that is exactly that for just here for the conditions of the people. So that actually may be something I ended up doing if I get the supplies. Because And then my friend in Loja, who all of a sudden, the last time I talked to him was the last time there were power outages, and he was asking about generators, and I went and I found him some, and then the power came back on.
And he's like, no, it's fine, I'll figure it out later.
So now the power's out again. He's like, oh yeah, about that generator. Dude!
And if you had bought it, then you'd have it.
That was like a year ago we had that whole conversation. And then you didn't until the power's out. Now it's a panic. I'm like, inventory's probably gone. Prices have gone up. It's going to be slim pickings again.
Yep.
You can't do this
And
at the last minute.
I'm noticing a lot of it. I've sort of spent, every spare minute kind of just listening and watching all of the YouTubers as they're sort of chronicling how this has happened, how it's affected them. And the thing I didn't realize was the particular time of year. If you are a homesteader in the U.S., basically, or Canada, there are seasons. What is this season? In the end of September.
That is animal harvest?
What have you just done? Have you just filled all your fridges and all your freezers and had the power go out? This did not occur to me because it is not...
Pooh!
Pooh! So somebody, who was it?
And if you can't get your hands on a generator to at least run your freezers...
It was Sow the Land. If you watch Homesteaders, you know.
Oh,
I was watching his video.
That's
like,
your entire
we just
year
harvested
in peril.
our all of our meat birds and all that stuff. I'm like, oh no. And he's like, well, we have a generator, but...
Can you get fuel?
No, they are not as badly hit. They probably could.
You're reliant on somebody else to get you fuel.
You're not just relying on somebody else. You're reliant on there being a road.
Yeah.
There are places where they are cut off. There are a lot of bridges that no longer exist.
Or your generator not failing. Like if you need a spark plugs.
All those little things. I had not thought about the time of year that it is and what that means for people. It is really bad for a lot of people. There is the potential of them losing so much work, so much time, so much money.
It's really interesting. There's a lot of homesteaders that are absolutely not off grid.
But they're very self-sufficient in all of their food. And I'm like, oh, that's great. So how's that food in that freezer going for you right now?
You're going to lose all of it if you can't emergency borrow, find,
and everyone is trying to borrow, find power.
Yeah. So, prepare ahead of time. If you want food, learn to farm years before you actually need to. You just have to start doing it and get good at it and get all the systems in place so that you have it. And then everything happens and you're like, oh, this is why I did that. You have to put in all the energy ahead of time.
And I hope this doesn't come off as like, oh, well, you should have done this and this and this. It's easy for us to say that. If that happened to us right now, I'm sure there'd be plenty of things that wouldn't go well for us. I mean, the fact that we live in tents is one, but besides that,
they are screwed down to a floating piece of wood.
Just rip apart.
Pallet.
They would just rip
No,
apart.
the pallet would float away.
The tent would rip apart first in that level of wind.
Oh.
We're not set up for that. If some sort of crazy weather event happened for us, there would be things that we would have... I wasn't wishing for it. Calm down. There would be things that we would not be prepared for. It's very loud.
Very loud.
Could we pause?
We're going to pause for a minute.
I had a very good... I hope this doesn't come off as us thinking like, oh, all these people should have done things better. Yeah, there's some of that. We could all always do things better. I know that if we had some sort of incredibly unusual weather event happen to us here, there would be something that would be a terrible disaster. We are not prepared for all things.
But it's just a wake-up call. The overall level of preparedness. Everybody needs to step it up. And the funny thing is, I've been watching like the government recommendations, and they've been marching down like, don't stock food, don't do this, don't. But there could be some sort of calamity that could literally disrupt the food supply for a week.
And that is going to be something in the U.S. that is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
That's very loud rain.
We're back. We just had a
rain event?
Tiny rain event, which you
It
know,
was lovely. We needed it. It just got a little loud.
yeah, it's 10, 15 minutes, something. Whatever. Where were we?
Disrupted supply chains.
Right.
Yeah, you should do it yourself. I don't know.
Yeah. So things learned from past events.
Either yours or someone else's.
Sure.
If you're watching these YouTubers and they're going to be chronicling how this has affected them and how they're going to recover and all of that, you could be learning from them.
There was a famous gun enthusiast forum, preppers things, where they would discuss what was the most important gun for every situation and the right caliber of that gun that you're going to be shooting for this and that. And well, you might have to this. Dudes get off into the weeds on these discussions. One of the guys who was really big on that list, who was like one of the head posters, went through Katrina, and he's like, yeah, I had all my guns, I left them. I took one handgun, I put it in my backpack, I never used it. There was all sorts of terrible, we had to flee, everything's destroyed. What I really needed, besides a sandwich, never underestimate the importance of convenience food in secure packaging, was a big crowbar. And that was it. Humbled the entire gun list of nothing that we've ever discussed was actually as useful as a big damn crowbar. My neighbor's stuck in his house. He can't get out through like bars on his windows, doors flooded out. Crowbar. Oh, there's a convenience store. It's flooded out. Everything's ruined. But there's water and some emergency food in there. We could break in to survive and take things, pop a door open. Things are jammed up. You just big crowbar. Big crowbar. Okay, where you can get at it.
Yeah.
Having food, having stable water. We have a couple of 5-gallon jugs of water that are stored that we've treated with iodine. Yep, dosed them up with enough iodine to make sure that they are sterile. It was clean water to start with, and capped them. We have 10 gallons of drinkable water.
And we know, in our particular circumstances, that we wouldn't flood, so we wouldn't have some of those issues just because of where we live.
We're at the beginning end of a valley where like the water sort of starts from a couple of finger valleys. The normal depth is about a foot. Flood depth is 4 feet. We're 100 feet above the water.
Other things may. That one's not going to happen.
No.
But I think it's important to look at. I guess to look at all of this, and instead of looking at it and being like, oh, it's really terrible for those people, learn something.
There was someone put up it was a search and rescue tip. They're like, if you're stranded somewhere, if you're not sure your cell phone's about to die, change your voicemail. Where you are, last location,
That's
what you're doing. You don't move after that. Help, I'm stuck, because nobody can call you. Your phone's about to die. You do need help. Give them every bit of clue on your voicemail message, and they can call in and get that. I'm like, oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah,
you could do a Facebook update. Same thing. You're like, we may lose power if suddenly you don't hear from me. This is what's going on.
Yeah, there are a lot of people missing, which I'm guessing a lot of those people just can't contact anyone. Because there is no power, there is no cell, there is no internet.
The river's coming up and they're going to flee, and they could have just done like a status update or a voicemail change of like, hey, I'm going up to high ground until the water recedes. I got a little shack up the hill or grandma's old house or whatever it is. Be back in a few days. We'll stop search and rescue coming to have to look for you, even though you are fine.
And as far as the off-grid stuff goes, we've said it before, we will continue to say it. Don't wait.
Even if you start really small, you don't have
some water.
Start, yeah.
Everyone can do that. I don't
you
care
can
where
stockpile some water. You can stockpile some food that is preserved in cans, jars, whatever. Get yourself a little solar system. It doesn't have to be enough to run everything. A couple of panels, a little cheapy inverter, some batteries. Don't get permits. Don't connect it to anything. You could use it to power the lights in a shed. Totally legal. But if you needed to, you can plug an emergency fridge or something into that. You can charge your phones. You have a little bit of emergency renewable energy.
Yeah, and that's for everyone. But I think specifically if you were homesteading, I don't know. I think I was just really taken by the idea that people have spent their entire year growing food for their family for the winter, for the next year, and they could lose it all. I don't think anyone should put themselves in that position.
That's more than a monetary loss.
That is. Yeah.
That's huge. Also, if you live surrounded by trees, own a chainsaw.
Know how to use the chainsaw. That's it.
Yep. Have fuel for the chainsaw. Bar oil, little kit. I used to carry one in my car when I lived out in the middle of the redwoods in California, and they told me you have to have a chainsaw to live in this house. When I rented it, I'm like, I've never used a chainsaw. I'll go buy a big chainsaw. So I went and bought a big chainsaw. Didn't know what to do with it, but bought some supplies. Kept it in the car.
And if you needed to use it, you would have figured
There
it out.
was several times a year where I would come home and there's trees laying across the road, and I'm like, well, I could go somewhere else till tomorrow and somebody else might clear it, or I could bust out my chainsaw, which I downgraded to a bow saw and some gloves and a hatchet, which the chainsaw was a bit of a problem to carry around, fuel and things.
Yeah. But that's just, I guess that's just my thoughts.
Emergency preparedness, the van. Our van has a tote in the back. I have a spare belt for the water pump and alternator. I have spark plugs, which I do have to change because it eats oil like it's going out of style. A couple of other random spares, spare lug nuts, and we had a thing we had to tire change. A couple of them stripped out. The guys, they were on too tight. Well, that was the last place. And he's like, yeah, well, we're stuck here unless I get some new ones from like the next big city. I have a spare set. He's like, you have some? He was utterly shocked. Yep, pull them out.
That's always in the van.
It's always in it. A little emergency tire pump. Thanks, Grandma.
Thanks. Aww.
Yeah.
Man, I love that thing.
Tire's flat. I have a little tire repair kit. It's just a tiny little thing. It's like an envelope size. I can put it in a pocket, but I can pull out a nail, a little pair of vice grips, and I can ream it. I put a little plug in there, and then we can refill it. Day not ruined.
Yeah. And if we are in a season of great rain, we usually just always take a shovel and a machete because you never know.
We've come across trees on the way going or coming.
Or a small landslide.
Yep.
Call it a slough.
Even a small shovel is a lot better than your hands and a stick.
Or just not going home. Or getting stuck on the road because that's happened. It's little things.
There's an extra gallon of gas in a container. There's small things. They just live in there. That is part of emergency preparedness. I have a flashlight, a good flashlight. I have the little inverter that I can use to recharge things.
Yeah.
Small stuff.
Yeah.
I like not getting stuck and having to just like, oh, I'm helpless. Sorry, that's how I feel if I was going to be all helpless.
I know, that's how I would feel too.
I have an answer. I have a backup answer. I have
picture a turtle on
another answer. I have ways to come up with other answers if those answers don't work out or failed for some reason.
And we have set ourselves up in a way where there is less chance of needing backup plans.
Yeah.
Because we are our own
We are the backup plan. We're literally on the backup plan. We've already taken plan B. We're here.
Because otherwise we would have had no power. Our local area is without power from I don't know, midnight to 5 a.m. and then from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that sucks. That just sucks.
Yeah, and then I went down to town. It was 4 in the afternoon, and when I got Cokes, they were already warmer than they normally are. And I'm like, it didn't go out an hour ago. Your power's been out for several hours. They're stretching out a little bit.
Is everyone okay? Yeah, everyone survives. Everyone's okay. It's just power. No one's...
All of the meat markets don't have refrigerated cases anymore.
They usually don't.
They usually have one, and then everything else is done sort of open air. But hot of the afternoon.
Yep.
Meat's just sitting in the case. Get warm.
Yep.
You hear the occasional generator.
Yeah. But we're perfectly happy, and we have everything we need. And Starlink is another thing that I saw on some of the off-grid groups.
Oh, yeah.
That I thought was a really interesting point. We have Starlink. We like it. It works well for us. A lot of people homesteading off-grid use it because there aren't a lot of other options. Honestly, if you're living remote, it is kind of the best option.
In the States, it is expensive per month.
It is, but it's not that much more than others. If you start comparing them. No, I've actually been in a lot of the message threads. Like it's right. More, but it's not substantially more, and it's reliable.
Okay. It is very reliable.
Whereas I've used some of the other options that suck. So there's something to be said for that. Someone had posted no cell service, no like way in and out things, but they did have power because they're off grid and they have their own power, and their Starlink worked, which meant they could not only communicate with other people, but they could see what was happening. I was watching a video where they're like, it's in the middle of the storm, and they're like, oh, we don't have any internet, we don't have any power, we have no idea. Is the storm over? Where is it?
Should we flee?
Should we
flee that way or that way?
They're like, we have no idea. He's like, well, I don't know. Should we even go out and like try to clear trees, or should we wait? Is it dangerous? Things? What's going on? What does the local town look like? Like, no communication, which for me would be alarming, I guess, that lack of knowledge. So having power and having something like Starlink gives you back a little bit of your autonomy to.
The only thing that takes down Starlink is severe space weather.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, our internet is on. That's how you're seeing this.
In the midst of a hurricane, people still have internet.
They're like, well, it's just Netflix. Chill. Let it all roll over.
I mean, if you've got power, you've got internet, and then you're like, well, we'll just wait.
Don't have a roof. Our roof has blown off. We've been there.
Yeah, we're not making light of any of it. It's just.
It actually held back on with a piece of wire.
Yeah, I mean, we're not fancy here. But that's just kind of the point of this video, I guess, is to perhaps take this as a bit of a lesson.
It is.
And this being like all of the weather calamities that can happen to you. Fire, flood, wind, tree.
Zombie.
Well, that hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will.
I don't know. I've seen video of Philadelphia. So, all right. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Well, I have hope you have enjoyed this conversation. I hope that you've learned something. I'm happy to answer questions about anything that we do here and how it may help you. Our off-gridness, our preparedness, and pretty much anything else. So, send us a comment. Subscribe if you haven't. Hope you have a great day, and our thoughts go out to all those in this really challenging moment of trying to get it all back together and then come up with a recovery plan. So, see you for the next one. J-O-T.